Hi, everybody. 1000 moved from his barracks room. Code red, right? Code red. Oops. What's going on here? Make sure everything is working. Um, so we are at day 1,809 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, and his life was taken from him. And it is July 15th, 2025. And, everything is, this whole thing, it's just really coming all together. And just so much to tell you tonight. Everything, we've been doing this for 5 years, and it takes that long to understand everything that has taken place, why people have done certain things. It's it's a huge murder case, right? This our son's case is a huge murder case, and it involves we're at 22 agencies involved in this, and it's international. And we've had to deal with each one of those agencies and then the institution. And of course, when you see an interview like Tucker Carlson did a couple days ago with, I think, Representative Santos, I don't know if I have his name right, but I watched the whole thing. And what he's telling you is that our Congress spends more time getting drunk on the hill and going then down into the basement to the cages and, having their way with each other down there because it's like this sign of power. That's what he was saying. I mean, and when you've been through 5 years of what we've been doing, knowing that these people are always sexually minded, vile and vulgar, right? And that our media and everything is grooming us to be that way, right? In our school and everything like that, that we can't see what's important in life to deal with, to move forward, because we're caught up in this animal house mentality that's even in our highest institutions like our Congress, right? Where the stench up there is not one of sobriety, right? Meaning that things aren't important then. Things aren't important, and that they're taking advantage. And, going through 5 years of this and understanding how important everything is along the way. Because, if you're coming in new, I want to make sure that you know that when our son went missing, when his life was taken from him, and they said he was missing or that he just walked away. And we were like, no, we need to look into this. Oh, no, we don't really look into this. We're going to take him off the rolls. They took him off the rolls. They put us in jurisdictional limbo land. We didn't agree with that. We fought very, very hard, and it was only social media. And during the time of Vanessa Guillen and her remains being found, and how horrible that whole situation is, that our social media got traction. I really give credit to the Guillen family for rallying for their family member, their sister, their daughter, their loved one, um, uh, to shining a light on our son's case, because it was that exposure that got us traction with our son's case, that the military then called up and said, "Oh yeah, okay, maybe we need to control this case. Maybe we need to control. You're learning too much from the Guillen family, right? You're learning too much from the Guillen family. Maybe we need to get in here and control this." And we're going to put Richard back on the rolls. Um, so they put Richard back on the rolls. And then when we got into the meeting and they weren't in uniform, meaning they didn't take it seriously. And, I'm mom. Uh, you know, my husband knew what was going on, but it wasn't until after the meeting that he was like, "Oh boy, that was a bunch of BS." They didn't take it seriously at all. They did it unofficially. They're not going to help us. They have no intention. Um, I didn't know that, and the CAO was asking me, "Well, what did you think?" And I'm like, "Okay, we have 15 plus agencies. Something is bound to happen." But they weren't in uniform, right? They weren't in this was um, hard to understand that 3 times more agencies were involved in our son's case than 9/11, right? Um, and they weren't in uniform, and there was no op board, and they, so it was hard to understand what was going on at that time. But we were asked by the command and by CID, which is the Criminal Investigative Division there, to bring forth leads that we would have to investigate ourselves and bring them leads, or they couldn't help us. That was what we were told. And we were shocked. We were like, "Oh, what do you mean?" I mean, you got 15 plus agencies, you got all of this support, you've got all of this technology. Um, and you're saying you can't help us unless we bring you leads, unless we do the investigation. And we knew that at that point that this was absolutely a cover up, and we didn't understand exactly what they were covering up. We knew that it was about our son and the loss of his life. We knew at that time that they knew that his life had been taken, you know, um, but it, there was so much cover up, so much misinformation, and so many bad actors in this, trying to whisper in your ear. And, media is the big culprit. They're not a help at all. They're really not a help. The social media is the help. And I'm forever grateful for social media. So, but to look back and see what's going on and our investigation, we never intended. That was never our intention to investigate, but we were told to do it, and we were really forced into doing it. And of course, because that was confirmation to us that this was serious and that our son's life was taken, and it was internal. We knew at that point that it was internal, because it was the internal that were so insane. And that was my message to the public, is that this we're facing insanity every day in the meetings. It's insanity. Nothing makes sense. Um, and of course, it was 2020 and 2021 and 2022, 2023, and we didn't know how to write the letters, who to write, who were the agencies, who were they all about. That all had to be learned. It was, we're not lawyers, and uh, we were never, our family never really was in trouble, so we never had to learn the system, I guess. It tells you the rotten education that we get, really, because we had to learn the system. Um, um, and a lot of things they don't tell you is the bad actors that they do have, like FBI agents. I would say that um, they're off the books FBI agents. And not only that, but you have political groups, political candidates that have groups of people that spies, let's say that spies or operatives. Operatives is a good word that will also send their operatives to you to infiltrate to get information. And we don't learn that that's going to happen, that the media is going to answer to somebody else, have a different intention, and that the uh, candidates or the political representatives or those the politicians, let's just say that, have their operatives that spy too, and that they're all up to no good. And that they're all up to no good because I guess they want to keep the party going there on the hill so that they can just go there and just drink it up and then go down to the cages and have their way with each other. That's it was very clear that they weren't there to do their jobs. They weren't there to do their jobs. They might give you a token so that that could be put into to the newspaper or something like that, or to the media. But so we absolutely have learned that we had to investigate ourselves if we wanted to get answers to what happened to our son. And of course, we were lied to over and over again by Richard's chain of command, by those that have a duty to protect him, by the senators, by the Congress. Veronica Escobar, she absolutely lied to us. She absolutely knows what happened to Richard. So does Ted Cruz. And it didn't matter if you had a D or an R, it didn't matter. Um, they absolutely have a mess in El Paso as far as their the system that they deal with every day and that they're supposed to be the oversight for, and they allow this mess. They allow the people of El Paso, of Fort Bliss, our military, to be used and abused and conned and everything. And they absolutely know what's going on. And so we figured that out. Figured out the system. It took a little bit, and we figured out who to write letters to, and we have absolutely been nonstop. Matter of fact, we're faster than ever, and we are. That's why you're seeing a lot of results, and of course. Um, there's been a lot of things happening even in when the Biden administration was in, a lot of things from that period of time that we were doing uh, in the learning process. And they might have blocked us, they might have blocked FOIAs, they might have tried their hardest, but don't ever forget that our efforts, and when I say our efforts, I mean your effort, because this is all about social media for our safety, social media to get the word out, because the media is not going to do it. Um, uh, but it was our collective efforts that on April 24th, 2024, we they were forced. Okay. They did not do it because they wanted to, but because our investigation had produced such hard evidence and so much of it that they had no other choice. They were forced to legally designate Richard as deceased. And that was a really, really big deal. And that is when we got our second confession from Leilani Hart, where she's like, I don't even know who Richard Halliday is. I don't even know who he is. When, in January, very early in January of 2021, right? Just weeks after we left there, but while we were there, because she turned in this paper on the 9th of 2021, she was already researching and writing who Richard is, and also making statements that that only an eyewitness can make a statement for, right? About, the information she was giving out in the papers that she was writing and researching about our son, Richard Halliday, was could only come from someone that was a witness and to what happened to him. And so, uh, in 2024, when she's lying, absolutely caught in a lie, saying that she didn't know who our son is, um, we have the proof that she absolutely did. And, and Leilani Hart is a convicted criminal, is a liar. I mean, that's her nature, is to lie constantly. And of course, Dallas Hart, his nature is, he takes after his mother, is a liar. And we talked to him on the phone, and he was like, "Oh, I haven't seen my mother in years." I think he said years. He didn't get along with her and that, and and that he didn't even know who Tavita Nusa is. And he called Tavita Nusa, the CID agent, he called him Travis. And this was on the phone with us, and it's on record, and maybe I'll release that. But um, but the thing is he lied, right? He lied, and he is lied with the travel statement form that he has, lied about being Richard's platoon leader, lied about not knowing who Tavita Noose is, because we were very because from the very beginning we were told that we had to do the investigation. Well, investigation is collecting information, right? So we had his Facebook before he took it down, before he cleansed it. He put it back up. He cleansed it. Like his flight that he was doing, solo flights, and the games where he's with friends talking with Solomona Nuusa. And I haven't really mentioned him so much, but we've had that information for a long time. We have Solomona's all his information too, because he's a chief, right? He's a Samoan chief. But he has another very, very important role in all of this, and with this discovery of the bodies, this dumping ground, the graveyard at this crematorium, where I guess it's just the dumping ground for the cartels, for the narco politicians, for the criminal trafficking, and also politically, the Pan Party and those that wanted. It's been really stopped now, but the illegal immigration, right? The illegal immigration, where they wanted caravans of people to come travel up to the southern border and come into the country. And these were not like nuns and priests that were traveling up, right? These were a lot of criminals in these groups, in these caravans, a lot of criminals. And so where there is a lot of criminals, there's going to be a lot of crime. And where there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of death. And so was a lot of death. And you would not even maybe even think about this, but these people, because they're in the funeral business, because they're in the con job business, because they're in the grifter business, that because they want to milk the system, they're in the milking of the system business, that they absolutely monetize the deaths, right? With the NGO, with the goodness of the American people who want a, a dignified death for human bodies, that we care about Corpus Christi, right? We care about Corpus Christi, and we don't want to see migrants dying in the desert, laying there being eaten by coyotes, torn apart, and everything like that. We don't want that. I mean, the whole thing with the condors in California, people were crying that the condors were going away, and the people that were sensible said, good, good, because the only time the condors show up is when there's dead bodies on the road. That's what make the condors come, right? And we don't want a society where we have a lot of condors, because that means we have a lot of dead on the road. We have a lot of roadkill, right? And so it kind of brought that to a halt, because there was some sensible people, fighting against the insanity of what they were doing with the condor, the bird, right? I don't know if you remember all that, but um, so there's a history. My point that I'm making is there's a history of knowing that when you have big caravans of people, and you have, many of them, let's say it's 10, let's say it's 20, maybe 30%, maybe it is only 10% of them being hard criminals, crime is going to happen. And when crime happens, there's death that happens. And these NGOs, and they know that the American people will absolutely fund through USAID, through charitable organizations, to help bury the dead, to help bury the dead. And so there was a lot of collection on these last few years, a lot of collection, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for each person, thousands of dollars. Um, and yet, what happened is a dumping ground of pile of rotting bodies, um, there in Juarez, right? Taking advantage of the system, not delivering and what their promises are, what their obligations are. And you have a real humanitarian crisis, a very humanitarian crisis that is sacrilege, really. For many of us, it's absolutely sacrilege. It's a disrespect of Corpus Christi. And then you find out that it's the very people involved in it that are involved in Richard's case. Okay, it's the very people that targeted Richard's case to tamper in it, to interfere in it, to get rid of important information for identification of Richard's remains. It is individuals that are trying to work in cooperation with the task force to look for Richard's remains. It is individuals that that are running funeral homes that are cross-border funeral homes in El Paso that are connected to the El Paso medical examiner, chief medical examiner, and also the mortuary affairs of the U.S. military. And that's where Solomona Nuusa comes in, because he was in charge. He had total access of the mortuary affairs for the military, the transportation of bodies, and everything that contains around that. That's his job, and I'll put more out about that. Um, and he is also a chief, which is also a conflict of interest, that he's a chief of a tribe in Samoa, right? And his family in Samoa are involved in the funeral business. And so when Tavita Nusa, and many Samoans join the military, um, and Solomona is no different, and his brother Tavita Nusa. So it's two brothers, Solomona Nuusa and Tavita Nusa, but Solomona is the chief. He has the chief position there in Samoa, and but they're brothers, and when Tavita Nusa joined the military, it wasn't CID at the time. He was a surgical technician. He was a surgical technician because his family's in the funeral business, so he absolutely knows how to um, how to do whatever a mortician needs to do to a body, right? Um, so Tavita Nusa has that skill set, and then he became a CID agent, a dirty CID agent, and he's a former dirty CID agent because his badge was terminated in 2021. We have confirmation of that. And of course, that is absolutely in connection to everything in our son's case, and some other information that we've gotten. But these two are brothers. One that is in charge of bodies that are no longer alive in the military, which would have to deal with Purchase Funeral Homes or Martin Funeral Homes or Sunset Funeral Homes. I think Sunset. I make sure I get these names right, but Purchase is a big one, and Martin Funeral Homes is another big one that handle the VAs, and then the big thing everyone needs to know is that these two brothers that are in charge of dead bodies and even investigating, um, their family to Leilani Hart, okay? Their family to Dallas Wayne Hart. And so when Dallas said that he didn't know who they were, he was absolutely lying. Absolutely lying, because we have his Facebook where he's in communication with them, especially when it came to the football, right? When it came to football. So, so we have the hard evidence that they were lying. And of course, Leilani Hart, our witness testimony right from the very beginning was that not only were they family, but that Leilani was intimate with Tavita Nusa, that they were up to no good. I wonder, like if they would have gone to Congress, would they have, gone down to the cages, and had their way with each other? Because they apparently, our reports are, they were having their way with each other. And James Hart, Leilani Hart's husband, you know, uh, so the it tells you that corroborates her first confession, where she's confessing that her family is into that, right? That her family is into that, and that her sons and her husband are into that, which is illegal, which is very illegal. And also, the whole films of the worst type of crimes against children, that when Dallas Hart came back from his deployment, that he uh, went over, and remember, Richard was whistleblowing even in Qatar. That when he came back from his deployment, he had to hurry up and find all of these recordings of the worst type of crimes against children. And he was at his mother's house looking for them. So this is, a lot of, he might say he didn't know his mother, but he does know his mother. He knows his mother very, very well. And he knows his father better than what children should know their father. Um, and it's a real it's very criminal. It's all very criminal. And so, for Solomona and Tavita Nusa, to all them to be family, and then of course, um, everything, every little position that they're in to uh, take advantage of the dead, and the benefits, any of the benefits, that was all in place. So of course, they don't want to let a chance like Richard go by, right? Um, because it was absolutely a code red and ordering of that. And you know that because of the retaliation that was done to Richard was absolutely insanity. And the JAG is covering it up, and even Sean Bernabe, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, the commander of Fort Bliss, covered it up. But he did make a statement like, well, that was, I don't know if I would have done that. That was pretty, that was torture, right? That was torture. And so but maybe he was just thinking, well, he's lost his life now and he's been dismembered now. What can I say? And I'm just going to cover up for this. And he did, and he covered up for it. But, the word is that maybe he covered up for more. Did he cover up for the pedophilias? Yes, he did. Did he cover up for the cartels? Yes, he did. Did he cover up for all the criminal trafficking? Absolutely. He's absolutely treasonous, because that's a national security a breach. That's a national security breach. And you have a national security breach and the dirtiness of the Nusas and the Mario Rascon Ortiz and the medical examiners, and with the judges in the criminal law magistrate court, and also in the DA's office, and also the chief of police for the El Paso ISD. That is also fake. Also, very problematic how they got their positions, that they weren't qualified for their positions, that they're up to no good. They're illegally holding their positions. So this is very, very clear that we suspect that Solomona Nuusa also has the same problems. So he got this job and the promotions and everything, but is he really qualified? Because the others aren't. There's so many others aren't. And Tavita Nusa, and we're getting more information. Tavita Nusa, he lost his badge. So it is really, um, you can see everything happening, and the fear around Richard's case, and the fear cannot be explained. The shaking, it cannot be explained to people. Just have to see it. They're very, very afraid, because uh, what what happened to Richard is just so bad, right? and it connects. And what do I mean by so bad? Do they care about what happened to Richard? I don't think so. I don't think they care at all. But do they care where, who's going to be implicated, who is going to be exposed? I think that's what they care about, because this absolutely has to do with child exploitation, child sexual exploitation, because Richard multiple times reported to Child Protective Services, right? And of course to the IG and to the FBI and to the CID and to Washington, D.C. He was absolutely, um, absolutely reporting the criminal trafficking and the child sexual exploitations. And at the highest level. So I see that, Rod Liston. Thank you for coming on. And I'm going to answer your question, but I don't want to lose track of what I'm about to say. Because everything is so serious, with 21 agencies being part of our son's case, 22 agencies, sorry, being part of our son's case. And early on, they even brought in over 15 for that meeting, right? And that includes the international, like the Interpol and like the Mexican military and government and all of that. So we knew ATF was there. So we knew that something had happened in Mexico. And, it makes you, for years, it's like, this is so serious. Who, must be billionaires, right? Must be billionaires. What billionaires? And so we have a list of billionaires that we believe is involved. And now, with all of this fuss around the Jeffrey Epstein files, we took the time to look into Jeffrey Epstein. And, he, I would say essentially his property bordered White Sands Missile Range, really essentially. It might not be a total land border, right? But because of the airspace, because of how close they are, they're so close, and the vast amount of land and the airstrip there, and the just the control of the military over that area, right? Over that area. They were essentially touching, really. I mean, you can say they were absolutely shared a border. That just makes your skin crawl when you think of the emergency intake center of these young children. And when I'm saying children, it's all the way up to 17 years old. And we know for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein liked his young girls, right? He liked his young girls. And we know that that emergency intake center, called the death camp, could sleep 10,000 at a time. And we know that there were hundreds of thousands of them trafficked right there, where they could, they just had a pipeline. It was connected. It was a pipeline. And of course, we know about all of the underground and all of that. That has been confirmed. That's not insanity. That's confirmed, and we know that even some of those underground smuggling tunnels are underneath some of the schools. The El Paso ISD schools and other schools in that area. So this is a huge pipeline. It is not absurd for us, after looking at the map, after seeing how close. I mean, it's so close. You can say they're connected. It's a pipeline of criminal trafficking activity. And are we sure that Fort Bliss was engaged in cartel tied narco politician, criminal trafficking of all kinds? Yes, of course, 100%. There's not a doubt in our mind with all of the information that we have. And so yes, Richard saw things. And so I'll get back to now the Rod Liston. Thank you so much. Anicia, thank you so much for your love and your prayers. And his first question is, what were the findings on Richard's cell phone data? That is really good question. Okay, so let me tell you what we have faced in that. Um, Richard was bought a brand new Apple phone by his grandfather when he was the Distinguished Honor Graduate for his cycle in basic training and AIT. His grandfather went there to his graduation with his grandmother. My parents, and he called them Omi and Opie, Omi and Opie, and they went. We were in Europe. Richard grew up in Ireland, and we were selling our place in Ireland and coming back to the United States. He's our youngest one, and when he joined, we were like, okay, we're coming back to the United States now. And so I had called my mom and dad, and I said, Richard is graduating from basic training. Do you want to go? Do you want to go? And they were like, they didn't, my parents never hesitated at all. They were like, absolutely, 100%. They got in there and they went to Fort Sill, and Richard was number one. Was number one. He didn't even tell us that he was number one. My parents were just like, wow, at the graduation. We got a video of it, and told us right away, and he got a $500 award, and we told him, Richard, we're going to match that. I'm putting $500 in your bank account. Congratulations for being number one in your cycle and basic training. And maybe I was wrong because, there was a little rift between Richard and us, like parents and son, because we didn't want him to join the military. Um, we really didn't. I wanted he wanted to pursue law enforcement. He wanted to be a private investigator or a criminal investigator, and I wanted him to go. I was looking at different colleges, maybe like Liberty University or something like that, with criminal investigative. Uh, and no, he wanted to do this. He wanted to do this, and we could not persuade him. And so when he got number one, I said, well, maybe I was, maybe we were wrong, Richard. And we just want to congratulate you. So we kind of ate crow. We kind of ate crow that, and um, in a very happy way, and gave him $500. And so, you know, uh, and my dad said, okay, and I'm buying you a new phone. And he bought him an iPhone, a brand new one. And he was very proud of it and everything. And he went to Qatar and he talked to my dad, his opiate, quite a bit. He wrote him a letter from basic training too. And they had a really good relationship because my dad was ADA. My dad was, Air Defense Artillery, retired, a senior NCO. And so, they were talking. And uh, when he got stationed or deployed to Qatar, he told my dad a lot of things that made my dad very upset. Matter of fact, even at Fort Sill, my dad was very upset about what he saw. No esprit de corps. He kept telling me he had a really hard time. He was even telling me and Rob that maybe we were right, that he should not have joined the military because it wasn't the military that he knew. There was no esprit de corps. And there's a problem when there's no esprit de corps, right? And I didn't get it for a while. And of course, my dad got very sick. Um, but this phone issue is a really important issue because the next thing we knew, we got messages saying that he forgot his phone at a laundromat or whatever, and it was like, what? What? Um, and, but Since then, since then, um, we have found out, because the level of retaliation that Richard got from his own chain of command. We're talking about his first sergeants, we're talking about his captain, we're talking about his lieutenant colonel, his platoon leader, Dallas Hart. We're talking about his and we're going to present information very soon showing you how they're really even connected outside of their military duty. The lieutenant colonel, the colonel, the um, the sergeant major, uh, it- the level of the General Clem Cower, the level of retaliation that Richard got from his command, um, is just insanity, and that started even with the fake unqualified chief of police, Manny Chavira, with his co-conspirator Bob Moore of El Paso Matters in 2019, when because Richard was, and we know this for sure, that he was complaining in 2019 already. He had seen things that were so bad, even in Qatar. And when he got back, Dallas Hart is hunting for his worst type of films, of the worst type of crimes against children. And Richard is being targeted. He's being targeted, and starting in January of 2020, the targeting started, the retaliation started, and it was severe. It was torture. It was really torture. And part of that, we believe, um, was taking away his phone, because they had access to his barracks room, to his phone. They could absolutely take away his phone. We were told that they took away his phone. Um, and so when all this happened, and they didn't even let us know that Richard was missing, that they didn't let us know, y'all. We had to call them, and then there was no cooperation, right? There was no cooperation from CID, because CID is Tavita Nusa. There's no cooperation from the chain of command, because they were the ones that targeted Richard. They are the ones that are the prime suspects. And one of the things is we never got a phone back. We never got a phone, and the phone records, um, it's because of so many legal things, um, and because of so much tampering, and I just can't even tell you how big this is. The only explanation to me is that Richard exposed billionaires. Richard exposed generals, four-star generals. He exposed a big criminal trafficking network that included pedophilia and children, and then of course involved contracts and everything. And um, and that is why it is not absurd to say that Richard was a whistleblower for what was going on in the investigations against the Jeffrey Epstein pipeline. Because absolutely, and don't forget General Kelly, General John Kelly. He's he, I want to say neck deep, but it's not. It's up to his eyeballs. It's up to his forehead. He's so deep in this, and he absolutely is criminal, because he was Southcom, four-star Marine, um, and right there in the White House, right there, betraying mutiny, total mutiny, and then and being Southcom, He had that relationship with Juarez. And so afterwards, he went over and worked for Chihuahua state government. He went to work for Governor Maru Campos, who is totally connected to this rotting body uh, dumping ground, right? With the funeral homes that are connected then to the medical examiner and to the mortuary affairs, to law enforcement, to Manny Chavira, um, to the schools, the trafficking, the DA's office, the criminal law magistrate court, to the narco politicians. So, what Richard was exposing, would they take away his phone and try to interfere and block and obstruct justice? At 100% they did. We have hard evidence that they did that. They even searched our home without a warrant. They went so far as to send the a unit through the FBI, which is CID, right? And of course the FBI there and El Paso. Uh, totally is part of this, right? Totally is part of this. And um went so far as to search our home in Florida. We were living in Florida at the time, without a warrant. And it's to wrap your head around the extent that they went to cover this up and what we have exposed through through it all. I mean, I can't even if I sit here and talk for 3 hours, I can't expose everything because it involves 22 agencies, then the media, then international. I mean, it was Dallas Hart's picture that was uh, that the picture that was given to Interpol to represent our son. I mean, and they wanted to do that to skew this picture, right? To do a composite that any kind of AI facial recognition in any kind of data bank that the Interpol uses, which of course, Chihuahua, Mexico uses for John Doe's, right? John Doe's and Jane Doe's. Um, it would never give a match if they found um, Richard, right? It would never give a match. It was all about identifying remains, and because it's Interpol and Mexico, and that they did everything to skew that possibility. Now, in the United States, um, uh, the information we have is that they did identify him, his remains. They didn't tell us because, um, because they didn't call us, because they didn't notify us, and because they thought that we wouldn't even care about our son. Um, and we believe that there was a lot of fraud, that there was because of their connections to disability benefits, to death benefits, to their group, that they just cash in on that kind of stuff. There's a real possibility from our information that we have that there was impersonation of Richard's family in order to cash in on his death. And we believe that in the United States and also in Mexico. Um, and, so this is, you just can't even make this stuff up. You can't. The evidence is so overwhelming. Um, and the delay, the April 24th, 2024, uh, caused so much anguish in Leilani Hart because she knew what it meant, right? That she had to do that crazy confession that we shared with everybody. And then on January 24th, 2025, the in the line of duty designation which with all the paperwork that we have absolutely confirmed that Richard was forcibly removed, and they took his life on Fort Bliss, and in the line of duty, which confirms well, we know that he was a whistleblower. We already have that confirmed. Um, and, this just confirms it even more, it corroborates it even more. And to have, uh, all, I mean, and I haven't even mentioned Adal Baim, who's the center of all of this, a Palestinian arms dealer, right? A Palestinian arms dealer is the center of all of this. And maybe it really is. Um, Maybe it is Jeffrey Epstein, who they're saying, oh, it's Mossad or whatever. Well, maybe it's Nadal Baim, a Palestinian arms dealer, that is part of this pipeline with the Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, they just try to divide people so much that you don't even think about the possibilities of the evidence that's right in front of you. And Adol Baim is right in the center of all of this, and he's being sued by Western Frontier Trading, and there's other LLCs, right? There's other LLCs, and they were absolutely being audited in 2019. They were absolutely being audited. And even Walmart was being investigated. And then, of course, Jeffrey Epstein was being investigated during that whole time. And so if they're being, and they're part of the pipeline. You look at Fort Bliss, White Sands, and this is where it just is. God's hand is on all of this. I was born on the range. I was born on White Sands Missile Range. That's where I was born. I wasn't born at William Beaumont. I was born on the range. And my dad, that's where you got your white hair, Patricia, from the White Sands of New Mexico, Donna Ana County. This is what I heard my whole life, right? And because I'm one of the very few babies that were ever born on the range, the missile range. And so many things happen on that range, and it's huge. It is the largest land mass military base that we have. That we have. It is huge, and it reaches all the way up, forms this pipeline that goes to Jeffrey Epstein's property. And I can't make that up. And he has a runway. And Dallas Hart was flying planes. And so was Dolores Montanez. She's flying planes. So was Deborah Sarah West. She was flying planes. And we have others and others that were flying planes from Santa Teresa, which is right there, Santa Teresa Jetport. And, you have this very convenient um, and you have a very convenient pipeline, and you have the billionaire, and you have other billionaires too. And you have a lot of people wanting to visit there, and they're not your average people, right? They're the elites. They're the elites. And you can go there now, and they're getting rid of the Target. There was a Target, the circles, the garden of circles. I guess they call it the vault. I don't know the vault. And to me, that's really interesting that it's a religious symbol. I guess it's a religious symbol. I guess only Jeffrey Epstein, but he's no longer here, could tell us what the symbol of the circles at his Zorro ranch is symbolized. But what I'm reading is that it symbolizes the vault, right? And when you think of a vault door, circles and everything, and turning or whatever, um, and from my dad, there are tunnels everywhere. There's tunnels everywhere, and it is. a huge mining. And so it makes you wonder, well, there's a lot of grids, which when you look at the land carefully, when you see grids, that's an indication that there's something underneath, that there is absolutely tunnels underneath, that there is, it could be a tell meaning a civilization underneath there. And, and we find them all over the world. Why not? They're in New Mexico or El Paso. El Paso has a grid. It's always had a grid. And New Mexico, just looking around New Mexico in that area, you see a grid, which is indications of tunnels, and they love their mining. And, the vault is, maybe an entrance into these mines, into these tunnels, and things like this. But I don't know. This is for the investigators. I know there's a lot of people that speculate, but rightfully so, because these people are up to no good. They're up to no good, and they get these land deals, and they get, create these pipelines that are paid for by the military, by the American taxpayer. I mean, the American taxpayer is paying for this fuel for the planes. The American taxpayer is paying for this property. The roads, you should see some of these roads going out there. They look so fantastic. And here I am in South Carolina, and we need some roads, that's why I've never liked Nikki Haley, because she always promised the roads and never delivered. But you got these roads out in middle of nowhere, and they're like the top grade kind of road, the top wonderful roads out there. And the taxpayers pay for that. Why is that? Who's traveling out there? This is pretty desolate area, right? Unless you're I don't know. I don't know. I'll leave that up to everybody who lives in New Mexico. I was born in New Mexico. I was born on White Sands Missile Range, right in the middle of all of this. I just can't even, it's just amazing to me. And so, yeah, did they take a bunch of stuff away from Richard? Absolutely. They isolated him. They tried everything, but remember, he just couldn't be compromised. And they just like we couldn't persuade him not to join the military, when he had his own mind, and it was a beautiful mind. Um, do I wish, you can't ever look back. You got to go forward. You have to trust God. God has a plan. Does our family feel that we absolutely have to get to the truth? You better believe it. We're going to honor Richard. Get to the bottom of this. We never believed what they were saying to us about Richard. It was all a bunch of BS. It really, what it was obstruction of justice, a witness intimidation, depravity, depravity of honest services, negligence, you name it. That's what it was. And you have the generals that are generals for the pedophiles, right? And they're using taxpayers' money, and they're protecting the pedophiles, and they're the generals of the cartels. Hey, you know, what is the Spanish word for comrade, right? That that's maybe they're calling Sean Cardona Bernabe, you know, LBB or something like that. I don't know. Um, uh, because he's absolutely a general for protecting the cartel operations that are with the narco politicians that are part of this rotting body dumping ground in Juarez, where you have hundreds of bodies, where they go, oops, and that this is just a rolling, rotting body dumping ground, and for animals too. Um, it's just a con job, and and Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia. She knows all about con jobs and Lilani Hart and Danae Katzen and Belen Rocha and Jesus Melendez, the K9 cop. You can't forget him. And Carzoli, the other El Paso Police Department, just dirty, dirty police officers, uh, you know, e- and dirty judges. And, it's just, we absolutely have an obligation to let El Pasoans know this because look at, they've got to protect themselves and they've got to stand up against this tax funded um, fraud, the tax funded fraud. And criminal activity, cartel criminal activity that leads to a lot of dead people and a lot of children trafficked, a lot of children, y'all. And then you have the substance and the all of the theft, the grand theft larceny. Really, that's what they're after. The grand theft larceny, the contracts, all of the supplies of weapons, the ammunition, even Humvees on Fort Bliss. Um, so there was a lot of theft, and of course the disability benefits and the death benefits, a lot of theft, y'all. So yeah, I hope. I mean, um, that's today. Today, absolutely uh, shocking. Solomon and Nusa and Tavita Nusa being family, being brothers, and being family with Lalani Hart and Dallas Hart, and the lies trying to cover that up because they're the prime suspects. And then, of course, with Nadal Baim, who's family with just about everyone, right? And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he was working in this pipeline that led up to Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch and all of the trafficking there. So thank you so much, everybody, and I hope I answered your questions. And thank you so much. And please share this because um, that's how we fix this is that people will find out and know and ask questions and demand that our government does fulfill their obligations to us. And they have to be forced to do it. We know that. They have to absolutely be forced to do it. So that takes a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what it takes. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much. And we will be back